Hello, everyone. Good to be with you, and welcome to Tennessee This Week. We want to begin by introducing our panel. George Korda, our political analyst, Courtney Piper, political contributor, Craig Griffith, our healthcare analyst. I'm your host, Don Hudson, and we have been talking about the special session every week, it seems like, for the last month. Now it's in play, and it almost feels like as soon as it started, it's winding down at this particular time. Last week, we talked about the fact that they might not even discuss guns. They would focus on mental health. And right now, our state Capitol newsroom reporter, Chris O'Brien, is saying it's turned into a Cold War between the State House and the Senate, and only 3 bills have passed even in the Senate. That's the speedy reporting to the TBI for crimes, free gun locks, no taxes on gun security devices, and requiring the TBI to give more regular reports on human trafficking. You have been watching what's going on, so I just want to get your take on a specific question on all this. And let's start with George.
Well, there's all kinds of tension. There's typically a little tension, even if you've got a supermajority between the House and the Senate. There was, back when the Democrats had control of the state, I was in one of the legislative committee rooms, and the chairman, the House chairman of the committee, who was a Democrat, said that there really wasn't something they could do because they were waiting on the House of Lords to get back to them with what they intended to do. So that was kind of a indicator about some of the feeling. Look, I got to say that of all the people in the state who approached this badly, Governor Bill Lee approached it the worst. He had no ability to cause anything to happen. In fact, he's kind of taken his hands off of this thing. And I guarantee you there are legislators that are angry at him for calling it. He's angry at them. They don't care anymore about whether he gets embarrassed or not, because usually you don't want to do that to your governor. And there was no consensus on any of this stuff, and he reacted emotionally because it was an emotional thing. And also politically, I have to do something. And he's wound up essentially doing nothing because he's now silent on the special session that he called.
Yeah, that would lead the question, where is he? Should he be advocating for something? Courtney or Craig, should he be out there where people can actually see him doing something?
Well, he didn't lay the groundwork for the special session. You go back to some of the other big ticket items he's tried to pass. He's gone around the state to try to lobby up support for individual positions, and he did nothing like that for this, other than throw it up in the air and see what would fall. And so it looks to me like $60,000 a day of taxpayers' money, a couple $100,000 already, is just being wasted in Nashville on this special session. And it has not worked out real well for the supermajority. I don't think many people are going to forget that picture of 3 large state troopers escorting out a small woman when they passed these new regulations about protesting and carrying signs,
which then got turned
down to an 8.5 by 11 sheet of typing paper and being escorted out by these state troopers. I don't think that's a good sign for the supermajority. And also, they backed off on day 2. They had people with signs and people with chanting and people with clapping, and they did not. They saw the bad PR in escorting the parents of people who were killed in a mass shooting at a school and didn't do it again. So, as I predicted last week, I didn't think much would happen, and not much is happening in terms of legislation.
But much has happened. Mark this week as the tipping point for Republicans in the state of Tennessee, specifically Senate and House Republicans. We've wondered for a very long time, for a long time in Tennessee, everything was controlled by Democrats. And then slowly in the early 2000s, the Republicans started chipping away and had this supermajority. And they're acting drunk with power. They are acting like an authoritarian regime, stifling people's right to free speech, the First Amendment rights, and also disrespecting the will of the people by not having these conversations in Nashville. And then you've got another state representative that puts an ostrich egg in the Senate chamber. I mean, they're acting like frat boys. They are not being respectful to their constituents, and they're not being responsive to their constituents. So mark this week as a tipping point for the Republican Party in Tennessee.
If that is the case, can Democrats capitalize on that? And how would
Oh, absolutely. You start running Democrats in some of those very vulnerable districts. So there was Representative Todd, I think it was, who made the comment that that shooter didn't need a gun to kill all those children. He would have just run them over in the parking lot. And you had a room full of parents who had lost their children or friends in that Covenant school shooting. I don't know how much more insensitive you can get and how much more you can show your rear end to your constituents. So, all Democrats have to do is start running candidates in some of these more vulnerable districts and then start chipping away at the supermajority.
Is it that easy, George?
No, there aren't that many vulnerable districts, number one. And number two,
it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen next year.
We've talked about in the past. If it were that popular, the Republicans in the House and Senate would be talking about bills they're going to pass, not arguing with each other about all the bills that are being tossed around. I mean, it's just not. And
here's my point: they're ignoring the will of the people. They're not listening.
They're ignoring the will of the people they're ignoring the will of the people who agree with you. And also, a lot of these districts where Democrats would want to run on this are already Democrats. They're already in cities that are the blue islands in this ocean of red that has been created in large part by the shift of the National Democratic Party so far to the left. Tennesseans didn't wake up 25 years ago and decide, you know what, all this time we've been voting Democrat, but we're really Republicans. That's not what happened. The Democratic Party shifted far left. Tennesseans did not move, and they're not going to move on this issue. It's wishful thinking. It makes for good rhetoric, but it's wishful thinking.
I think we have to entertain, hang on. I think we have to entertain the idea that the public polling is right and state representatives and senators are not responding to the will of the people.
On that subject,
it remains to be seen what the political consequences are.
The districts have been carefully drawn in favor of the Republican incumbents.
Okay,
and it's going to be very difficult. Actually, in any election across the country, the number of times that an incumbent gets beat and is actually thrown out of office is less than 5%.
And Craig,
so it's not going to be.
To your point, that's exactly what had to happen in Tennessee, with Republicans beating Democrats in districts drawn to favor Democrats in order to get to the majority. That's exactly what happened in Tennessee. And there's nothing in this special session that's going to turn that around.
No, you're still going to have the urban-rural divide that's going to dominate our legislature because it's dominated by the rural counties. So I don't think that the not taking any action in this special session is going to cost anyone a seat because the seats so rarely turn over to begin with.
And let me just jump in here. We talked about will of the people. I heard day one or day two of this, a woman with Women for Gun Rights saying that Tennessean voters say to keep their community safe, 84% of them say that a dangerous individual should be removed from the community rather than just taking their guns. Now, immediately I said, people stay numbers all the time. I looked it up. It was a survey from a national public opinion research firm. Basically, they took people and said, hey, would you want a red flag law? A lot of them said yes. And then they said, now you understand that the person's still there who's got the issue, and it is possible that some of your rights could be violated, due process. And then that number went way down by 21 points when they were told that. So are the Republican lawmakers saying, hey, this is what people really feel like? They understand this as an issue to say, hey, this isn't just do something now. We want you to actually go to the individual more than the gun. Did they understand that, or they just have nothing to lose?
Well, does that mean the individual gets put in jail? Like you'd rather have the person put in jail than take away their gun?
I don't know if that was where the end of it. I'm just reading. It just said, would you rather them take the person who's the issue or the gun away and leave the person right there? And
I
Well,
mean,
on to
again, but
issue
that's what
raised,
this tells
the-
me are these topics. Tennesseans want the Tennessee General Assembly to talk about these things. And by not talking about them and also disrespecting their constituents and silencing people's First Amendment rights, it's not doing anybody any favors.
Don, to your point, the issue about what about the person who's committing the act? There is no conversation whatsoever about the person who committed the act. In fact, that individual who committed the atrocity at the Covenant School wrote some sort of, they're always called manifestos, which is still secret. Now, maybe there's something in that document that would be valuable to know about why this person did what they did and how that might affect thinking going forward, but it's being kept a state secret. So there's no conversation at all about the individuals who actually commit these atrocities. It's all about what kind of new regulations and rules can we come up with to deal with the people who aren't hurting anybody.
I was on a community town hall, tele-town hall with Speaker Sexton this week. And I found it very ironic that he's supporting stronger involuntary commitment laws for people with mental illness. And yet 5 minutes later in the conversation, he said he wasn't supporting a red flag law. He wouldn't take people's gunaways, but he would put people in mental health institutions against their will and totally deny them of their liberty. So I couldn't rectify those two positions in that town hall meeting.
All right, we're gonna wrap that up. See what they come up with on Monday when they get back together, if they even get back together. A couple other subjects we want to get into, so we'll take a break and we'll be right back. And welcome back to Tennessee This Week. We just saw the first GOP presidential debate. The next one, in case you want to put it in your calendar, September 27th. So whatever happened is going to last until then. I'm curious who won, who lost, who didn't take advantage, who's going to be gone at this point. And we'll start with Craig.
Well, it's hard to tell winners and losers at this point in time. You'll over the next week, you'll follow the money, see which candidates were able to fundraise off their performance at the debate. That will show you the winners and losers. But personally, I thought Mike Pence was more emphatic, more in a commanding position than I've ever seen him in any particular debate. So it really was a battle of the junior varsity, as I've heard. As they say, the elephant in the room, Donald Trump was not there. And so they were really trying to figure out a way if they could make up 30 points in the polls that Donald Trump is ahead. And I didn't see anybody land a knockout punch on Donald Trump or any of the other people on the debate stage that would cause much of a change, if any change, in the polling data. Now, I watched the interview on Platform X, formerly known as Twitter, with Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump, and that was worse than the debate. It was a very unusual discussion of everything except for the issues facing the country. It was more of the Donald Trump being a victim. They talked about Jeffrey Epstein, what happened to him in jail. They talked about low running toilets and faucets in California. It was very bizarre, and I don't know that anyone that would have come across with any significant policy position out of either that interview on the platform formerly known as Twitter or from the debate on the Fox News network.
Well, maybe nothing of substance, but they had 237 million views on it. So they got a lot of views, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, does that translate into votes?
I don't. Yeah, like I said, I'm not saying what that means. Anyway, George. Sorry, Craig.
I don't know that debates. They're really not debates. They're a form of social media in a video format. And most of the analyses that I read today were all about who didn't get a zinger, who didn't get who got a shot at somebody, who didn't get a shot at somebody. It's show business. It's not debating serious national policy. It's looking to see who gets the Reagan-esque, I'm not going to blame the opponent because of his youth and inexperience. The gotcha line. And I think it's essentially to significantly, from a policy standpoint, a waste of time. And it's just a horse show. And you're walking the horses through to see which one looks the best. And the thing I took away from it was all of these people are seeing something in their polling that says I always have trouble with his name, Ramaswamy. I'm sorry, I'm just always have trouble with his name.
Who you're talking
Ramaswamy,
about.
yes.
He has all of them concerned, and I don't care if he is in the single digits. If somebody's in the single digits, you don't talk about him unless you're concerned about what he's capable of doing. He's a new face. He's a different face. He's a guy who's apparently attracting attention in a way that the other candidates don't like. And I think that was a big takeaway.
Courtney.
George, you're so cynical about debates. I love a debate. There's a political debate. I want to watch it. I've been looking forward to this debate all week. I sat down to watch it and I fell asleep about 30 minutes in. It's just, I heard a lot of the same. It was a lot of talking points and a lot of yelling, and there was not a whole lot of substance to it. Now, I don't know how much substance you can really get into with that many people on a stage. But I guess I was expecting more and I fell asleep. Now, I did get to hear a couple of the candidates the next morning on various news programs talk about how they thought they did at the debate, what messaging they wanted to get through, and that sort of thing. And I think one of the things that I think could be interesting as the campaign plays out is Nikki Haley's talking point has been about the Republicans need to present a vision for the future. We're not presenting a vision for the future. We need to do that, and I'm going to be the candidate to do that. So, that's sort of interesting to see how that plays out and if she can improve her positioning with that kind of messaging in the polls, because everybody else tends to be leaning very heavily on, Donald Trump. So, I'm really interested to see who the top person is.
All right. Well, we'll just stick to that one topic for this segment, and we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with much more. Welcome back to Tennessee This Week. We're going to get more local with this segment here. First off, we had this accident that happened here during the week. The student at UT, Ben Kradich, his father, one of the coaches, the swimming and diving, his mother very involved in the community, especially special education community. We understand that the person being accused was apparently found passed out in a vehicle that used Narcan. And somewhere, and I don't have all the timeline, he's back in a car, and now police accusing him of being involved in this fatal accident that took Ben's life, this UT student. I'm curious what questions you have from how this seems to have played out here. Courtney?
I have a lot of questions. And first I'll say I swam at the University of Tennessee. Matt came in just a couple of years after I graduated, but we are one big family. So I've met Matt. I know Kim. I've gotten to know Kim a lot more just through my advocacy with the Knox County public school system. And I had the opportunity to meet Ben several times. I would see him just sort of out running errands with his father. And then he was actually involved in a meeting that we had with Mayor Jacobs. And it's really hard to talk about this without getting emotional, because it is such a senseless tragedy. And, I think about there are certain medical diagnostics testing that you get where you cannot drive yourself home. And I'm wondering how somebody who was administered Narcan at a hospital was allowed to drive themselves away from the hospital. I don't understand how that's allowed to happen.
George, or
well, is it known? I'm sorry, I'm not aware of whether this is the fact or not. Whether the hospital released him, or he just left, or what? Do we know that that part of the timeline?
We know that there's a KPD press release that has more of the details, but we know that he was found unconscious, first found unconscious in his vehicle. The police found heroin in his vehicle. He was transported to a hospital and was administered Narcan and refused additional treatment. So we don't really know how he got his car back. We don't know how he got to the hospital. There's a lot of details that are unclear.
I think I sense new legislation being introduced in the next session. But the thing about it is, I mean, I don't know how anybody who has kids, I mean, they expect to have their whole life in front of them.
Right.
And suddenly, not only is it not in front of them, it's gone. And it caused me to think of a verse in the book of James, that your life is a vapor that appears and then vanishes away. But nobody wants or expects it to end at that stage. And the tragedy is compounded in a way because of that reality.
Craig?
I don't want to talk about the investigation. I don't know enough about it, and I don't know what direction the police are going in, and when we'll establish, what is an accurate timeline and the facts relating to that. It's just the tragedy for the family. That's really what I care about. It's life snuffed out far too early, and the grieving parents that have to endure all this. That's tough. And but it does seem like drug addiction was involved in this, and we need to do more as a community to try to stop not only the supply of drugs coming into our community, but the demand for drugs. If we can get the demand down, we can get the supply down. And I think we need to do everything we can to help people who are addicted to get them off and to prevent another tragedy like this from occurring.
Last topic. Thank you for that. But the Thompson Bowling Arena is now the Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center. Food City coming in with close to $20 million over the next 10 years, which obviously will help pay for renovations and other things like that. But you've both been here in this area, all been to the arena, I'm sure. I'm just curious your take on adding the name to it. I mean, it's Pat Summitt Court, right? So there's Pat Summitt Court, then you've got Thompson Bowling Arena, and now it's Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center.
And eventually it will be some sponsor and at Pat Summitt Court in Thompson Bowling Food City Arena. Because in the end, it all comes down to money.
That might be a sacred thing. I wonder if that would actually happen. But
well, I mean, up in Lexington, the UK football field is brought to you by Kroger's.
Right.
So it's all about getting the dollars, like George says. The cost of these big time sports programs are getting so exorbitant, and the facilities they're wanting to have, the top of the line. Stadiums, practice equipment, workout equipment is becoming so expensive that these athletic departments are just nothing more than a business. And they claim that they don't ever operate at state money, until they run a deficit like UT did several years ago, and they had to get some money from the university. So, it's fine. I'm glad Food City wants to be partners with UT. I hope the money goes to a good cause over there. And I hope that the coach keeps on winning at the rate he's winning now.
And Courtney, we have 30 seconds left. You get the last comment.
I don't love it.
Okay.
I don't love it. I don't love taking sort of iconic pieces of the University of Tennessee's campus that have people's names attached to them that played some role in getting it there or in the program that it represents, and sort of substituting that with sort of a corporate identity. I don't love it.
Well, if you've got $21 million, you might be able to turn around this $20 million deal.
I'll start a GoFundMe.
Okay. Let's have a pool till they grant the naming rights for the Big Kahuna, the Big Girl.
The stadium.
They grant the naming rights for Neyland Stadium. And see what happens.
Yeah. I want to thank our panel for being with us, for answering questions, for sharing their opinions, and want to thank you for watching. See you next week on Tennessee This Week.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Nexstar Broadcasting.